Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Maria Raihana Kushairi and I will be your MC for today. This webinar is supported by the Malaysian Armed Forces and Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia, co-organized by DSA Exhibition and Conference in Berhad, ROC Exhibitions in Berhad, and SIDEPS in Berhad. The theme for today's webinar is the future of drones and air mobility systems, issues, challenges, and opportunities, and presented by Schiebel and our gold sponsor, Aerodyne Group. We are so honored to be joined by a line of speakers from excellent backgrounds today. Before we begin, please be reminded of the ground rules for today's webinar. If you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to type your questions on the Q&A box or by tweeting us at Alias DSA Malaysia, or you may post your questions at our comment section on our Facebook, Defense Services Asia. We will be sure to entertain you after the presentation of the speakers. Should there be any internet disruption during the webinar, please be patient and try to sign in again. Also, a gentle reminder to mind your language because you are visible in the chat room. And last but not least, we'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your colleagues and your social networks. Now, let's take a look at today's program. Today's webinar program will begin with the welcoming address by the Chief of Defence Force Malaysia, Yang Berbahagia General Tan Sri Datuk Sri HAJI AFFENDI bin BUANG Royal Malaysian Air Force. The program will then be continued with presentations by our panel speakers, Captain Chester Vu Chee Soon, the Chief Executive Officer of Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia, Mr. Neil Hunter and Mr. David Peel from Schiebel, Major Nik Muhammad Hazriq bin Muhammad Zain from Defence Intelligence Staff Division of Malaysian Armed Forces, and finally, Mr. Kamaru Mohammed, the founder and CEO of Aerodyne Group. Before the end of the session, we will also be having a question and answer session. Should you have any questions to ask our panelists, please feel free to drop your questions at the Q&A box below. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our moderator for today's webinar, Yang Berbahagia Lieutenant General Dr. William Stevenson, retired. He was commissioned to the Royal Engineer Regiment, and during his service, he had held various command and staff appointments. He is currently the Chairman of Petra Diversified Systems and Technologies in Berhad and Executive Chairman of Spy Force Malaysia in Berhad. Now, without further ado, I hand over the floor to Dr. William. Dr. William, over to you.
Thank you, Maria, for the kind introduction. Well, good afternoon and welcome to this webinar on the future of drones and air mobility systems, issues and challenges and opportunities. Today, we have more than 900 participants registered for this webinar from 34 countries. Now, before we proceed, please allow me to express my sincere appreciation to the organizers, DSA Malaysia, for inviting me to moderate this webinar. A special thanks to Schiebel for presenting this webinar and the gold sponsor, Aerodyne Group. It is indeed an honor for me to be part of this program, which is supported by the Malaysian Armed Forces and the Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia. Now, ladies and gentlemen, drone and UAV technology is rapidly becoming a popular option for a wide variety of industries across the world. And in particular, it is making a huge difference in the military and security sector, where drones are being deployed in operations on various missions, such as to conduct border security and surveillance, amongst others. In addition to that, now due to the COVID pandemic, the police are also using drones to monitor and control citizen movement to ensure that they comply with lockdown regulations. Well, what other areas can these unmanned systems help us in, particularly in our daily routines? Now, the objective of this webinar is to discuss the development of these industries, and we hope that by the end of this session, attendees will be able to gain a better understanding of the drone market, connect with industry experts, and explore new opportunities. For this purpose, we are fortunate to have industry captains to give their views on the future drone capabilities, issues faced in the market, as well as the challenges from the regulatory point of view. Well, we have with us a distinguished panel of speakers. Now, before we proceed, let me briefly introduce our panelists. Our first speaker for the day is Captain Chester Wu, the Chief Executive Officer of the Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia, or CAAM. Well, he started his career with the Malaysian Airlines in 1993 as a cadet pilot, and over a career of 27 years, he has flown the Boeing 737, Airbus A330, and the Airbus A320. He has also served AirAsia Berhad in the last 12 years and was involved in various management roles with the airline until he was appointed to his current appointment as the CEO of CAAM. Next, we have two speakers from Schiebel, that is Mr. Neil Hunter and Mr. David Peel. Mr. Neil Hunter has a wealth of experience in both the aviation and maritime domains, particularly in the robotic sector. Currently, he is the Global Business Director for the aerospace manufacturer Schiebel, headquartered in Vienna, Austria. Prior to this, he held appointments which included CEO of IRIS Group delivering unmanned air systems, CEO of UMS Group in Switzerland, and Head of Business Development at Babcock Aerospace in the UK. Prior to this, he had served in the British Royal Navy as a commanding officer of a fully operational warship and as an aviator, accruing about 2,000 fixed-wing and rotary flying hours, and was also awarded the Queen's Commendation for bravery in the air. Also joining us today is Mr. David Peel, who had formerly served in the British Royal Air Force. And now he has a rewarding 23-year military career as a senior officer in the Air Force. He has a wealth of experience in both the aviation and personnel development domains. Currently, he's the Asia Sales Director for the aerospace manufacturer Schiebel. Prior to this appointment, he had served and he was Chief Pilot and Aviation Examiner for the Bhutan government, Chief Pilot in the Nepal High Altitude Rescue Company, and Chief Pilot of Helicopter Corporation in New Zealand. He was also an instructor and approved Aviation Authority examiner. The next speaker is Major Hazriq Mohammed Zain. He is currently serving as the Unmanned Aerial Systems Operations Officer for the Defense Intelligence Staff Division of the Malaysian Armed Forces. He has vast experience being involved in many special projects such as tactical and operations for unmanned aerial systems, tactical and operations for intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, and cyber forensics. In addition, he is also OEM certified for several different US companies. During his career, he had also served and was assigned to several positions, including Operations Officer for the Eastern Sabah Security Command, or ESCOM, and the Security Officer for the Defense Intelligence Staff Division of the Malaysian Armed Forces. Well, last but not least, our final speaker is Mr. Kamarul Muhammad, the founder and CEO of Aerodyne Group, a Malaysian drone solutions company that is ranked second in the world by the Insights of Germany. And he was also named by Nikkei Japan as the CEO of Top 10 Hottest Startup of 2019. Kamarul led Aerodyne from a 3-person startup in 2014 to a global company operating in 35 countries in less than 5 years. He is a TEDx speaker and a drone industry thought leader, and have presented his ideas and innovations on artificial intelligence, drones, and Industry 4.0 around the world. Well, I take this opportunity to welcome all our speakers. Now, as I mentioned earlier, today's webinar is presented by Schiebel and our gold sponsor, Aerodyne Group. Schiebel was founded in 1951 in Vienna. The globally operating Schiebel Group focuses on the development, testing, and production of the revolutionary camcopter S-100 Unmanned Air Systems, or UAS. Certified to meet ASEAN 9100 standards, Schiebel has built an international reputation for producing quality defense and humanitarian products, which are backed by exceptional after-sales service and support. Schiebel maintains production facilities in Waingen, Neustadt, that's in Australia, and Abu Dhabi, UAE, and as well as offices in Vienna, Washington, DC, and Shoalhaven in Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, now, before we get the panelists to share their views, we are honored to have the Chief of Defence Force, Yang Berbahagia General Tan Sri Dato Sri HAJI AFFENDI bin BUANG, RMAF, to give his welcoming address. Now, before that, allow me to share a brief background of our Tan Sri. Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Effendi received his basic training at the Officer Cadet School in Port Dickson, Malaysia. He had held various appointments, staff and command throughout his career, and he was among the officers selected from the RMAF MiG-29 project team in 1994, which later became the MiG-29 RMAF technical team in Russia. Throughout his operational flying career, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri is a force to be reckoned with him as a fighter pilot. He was actively involved in various air operations, including flying close to air support and battlefield interdiction missions during the fight against the communist insurgency in the late 1980s. Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri is instrumental for the RMAF drive towards the procurement of the medium altitude, long endurance unmanned aircraft systems, and its capabilities during his tenure as the Chief of Air Force from December 2016 to January 2020. Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri reached the pinnacle of his career on 2nd January this year as the 21st Chief of Defence Force, Malaysia. Let us now lend our ears to our CDF's welcoming address.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. Allow me to first express my sincere appreciation to the organizer, Defence Service Asia, AeroSea Exhibition and CYDEF for their proactive stance and taking the initiative producing this webinar series. As part of the effort to keep the industry connected and well informed with the latest development in the defense and security sector. As it has been observed, the COVID-19 crisis has impacted the way we work, do conferences and meetings. I believe that holding virtual meetings such as this will become a new normal, as it provides along with it many supporting benefits such as the ability to enhance work productivity, reduce traveling costs, and build new connections globally. Ladies and gentlemen, it is no longer a surprise to see businesses going paperless. Many are now shifting to clouds. We now live in a world where technology has finally matched up with our imagination, changing the way we do things in a much more efficient way. Similarly, in the military, such technology has to be optimized toward our competitive advantage so that our geographically dispersed forces can focus on their core responsibility. Critical application and tools such as biometric technology, cyber domain system, drones and anti-drones, target acquisition, geographic information system, and many smarter sensory-based applications will be used to aid in quick decision-making. IR 4.0 will certainly be the next big thing for the global defense and security industry. We will be seeing a lot more cyber-driven systems powered by Internet of Things, autonomous machine, big data analytics, artificial intelligence, and cloud computing, all coming together as the next evolutionary step to enhance our life in the future. The pace of innovation will be extremely rapid, and it won't be an easy task. It is imperative that nation and the industry continue to come together to educate their workforce, to acquire the necessary knowledge, skill and resources to develop, maintain and upgrade the system in the future. Cybersecurity and information privacy also play an important role in supporting the development of IR 4.0. Distinguished attendees, today's webinar series entitled The Future of Drone and Air Mobility System, Issues, Challenges and Opportunity come at very timely manner. Drone and unmanned aerial system is now a necessary tool, not just for military and security professionals, but also for commercial and industrial. A robust ecosystem is required to fuel the growth of this new emerging industry. We have recently used drones and UAVs to perform live surveillance and improve crowd monitoring activities in Malaysia during the movement control order period. This form of surveillance was an enhanced methodology as compared to deploying people on foot to monitor the control order, especially for such an event that requires conscious distancing due to the pandemic. At the same time, the Malaysian Armed Forces has large requirement to upgrade its capabilities of surveillance and monitoring via procurement of tactical and strategic systems such as MALE UAV in RMK-12. To bolster its intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities. There are, of course, challenges and operational issues that need to be addressed. It is through platforms such as this webinar series that we can collectively share our knowledge and experiences to improve the operational concept of the drone technology further. Finally, I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the distinguished speakers for their valuable insight and contribution, and to thank the organizers and sponsors for making this webinar series a successful, informative, and engaging program. It is my hope that this webinar will provide a lot of valuable insight to all attendees and viewers. With that, I would like to wish everyone a productive and informative webinar session ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tan Sri, for your time despite your busy schedule, for the meaningful insights in your keynote address. As mentioned just now, drones and unmanned aerial systems are now necessary tools, not just for the military and security professionals, but also for commercial and the industrial sector. Therefore, it is timely for us to master and equip ourselves with the necessary knowledge to fuel this robust ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to listen to our panel of speakers, and let us begin with our first presentation from Captain Chester Wu, the Chief Executive Officer of the Civil Aviation Authority, Malaysia. He will be delivering his presentation on safety first in regulating drone operations. Captain Chester, the floor is yours.
Salam sejahtera. Firstly, I'd like to thank Dr. William Stevenson for the kind introduction. First of all, secondly, I'd like to thank ESA Exhibition and Conference, ROC Exhibition, and SIDEX GmbH for organizing this virtual event. I'm grateful to be given this opportunity to speak in this webinar, especially to touch on the topic of the future of drone operations, where safety is at my utmost concern. Safety and security for the public will always remain first priority for Civil Aviation Authority Malaysia. I would like to acknowledge the speech delivered by the Honourable General Tan Sri AFFENDI BUANG, Chief of Defence Forces Malaysia, for the use of seminars, webinars, and also virtual conferences as the working way forward of the new norm. We should embrace technology. We should be able to adapt ourselves to the new norms and maintain communication to the public and to everybody. So this webinar is a very good forum, and we should continue to play our part in breaking the infectious coronavirus pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, the growth of drone technology in Malaysia and in the world is a known thing. Not just the future, but even now, drone technology has evolved tremendously. Now, with this expansion of technology, there will be challenges for everyone and for us as a regulator as we strive to maintain public safety at the highest of levels. There will be risks, lots of risks, but when risks are managed and mitigated, it will result in greater public safety and better regulations to allow drone industry or any industry related to technology to continue to grow. We're seeing a steep increase in drone usage. In Malaysia right now, there are lots of drones, from hobbyists to drone companies and drone developers that want to continue to push technology boundaries. Now, it is very important that Civil Aviation Authority Malaysia continues to play an important and leadership role as a regulator to ensure that the industry and the technology grows, but regulations continue to keep our public safe and to maintain a level of discipline and also an understanding of what safety really means. Now, let me share with you some of the challenges. There will be challenges. The difference between a drone operator and a commercial airline pilot or an aircraft pilot. The main difference is when an aeroplane, which is manned, has a failure or a problem, the pilot will be on board that plane, managing the failure through a series of emergency checklists and procedures. However, when a drone is in operation and in flight, now the problem is the pilot will be on the ground. The pilot or the manned personnel, the controlling person, will not be on the drone. They will be in different locations. Now, this is where regulation will need to include safety risk assessment, will need to include comprehensive insurance, will need to include unmanned traffic monitoring system to ensure that we know what the drone is doing, where the drone is at all times, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, we must be able to have the drone pilots be competently trained. Now, this is where the key to safety will fall in training as well. Competent training must include a lot of items. Now, Civil Aviation Authority Malaysia will strive to create an effective framework of training and will start in the very near future to begin to certify these training frameworks by companies or organizations that will be able to conduct this training competent to ensure that the drone pilots are not only confident but also able to handle a lot of items. Now, moving forward, apart from training, apart from the technology that we currently have, I call out to all industry players, technology players, to continue to develop technology, but maintain a strict focus on safety. Let me give you an example. A drone, as high-tech as it can be, should contain a lot of safety features. Example, how does a drone allow for crosswind? If you have AI to maintain GPS coordinates to keep the drone on track at all times, what happens when if there is a failure? How do we manage this failure? By allowing drift, for example, where the pilot can take over manual control and maintain the accurate drift correction to flight track. What happens if there's an engine failure or lost control of the drone? What happens if the drone loses multiple engines? What is the reactionary control? I understand that technology will have items like controlled landing, controlled crash. You will have a lot of terms that you will train your pilots on. Now, in the inevitable event where the drone has to contact an area where it becomes out of control, do we have a closure rate reduction system? Do we have parachutes? Do we have airbags in the drone that will activate automatically or can be remotely activated to reduce public injury in the event the drone goes out of control? Now, this is where this technology, I believe, will be present and must be present as we move along and drive the innovation and the technology of drones in Malaysia. Currently, just to give you an accurate update of what CAAM is doing with the industry, Civil Aviation Authority Malaysia has met with all related agencies in Malaysia, regulatory agencies that will become part of the framework of allowing an approval with new regulation for drones to continue to push technological boundaries. After we meet and we come to an agreement on how and when are we going to start new regulations or even sandbox approval type method approvals, what we plan to do is we plan to allow the industry to grow and expand with a limited scope in geofence areas within the safety confines of non-populated areas. This is an important safety mitigation step to ensure that public safety is maintained and safeguarded at all times. After we complete this item, we should be in the very, very near future. We will be calling the drone industry and the technological industry and we will be meeting for an open forum to brief everyone on what are the plans, what is allowed and what is not allowed. I urge the industry to give us a little bit more time as we strive to create this framework to allow continuous technological growth. In the meantime, Civil Aviation Authority Malaysia would like to remind the industry and the public that the operation of drones must follow all regulations stated out. If you are unsure at any time, please contact us. Visit our website and find out. We need to do a little bit of reading. What are the regulations of what is allowed and what is not allowed? Remember, to maintain regulation, the compliance of it is all for the main goal that Civil Aviation Authority Malaysia has, which becomes our responsibility and each and every one of your responsibility to keep our people safe. So I urge all operators to visit Civil Aviation Authority Malaysia's website and use this as a platform to cross-check what are we doing and how are we doing things to ensure that all current regulations are met. Civil Aviation Authority Malaysia remains very facilitative, collaborative, and we are always here to answer all your questions. I personally look forward to receiving your emails or your questions at any time at all, so that we may take this opportunity to clarify. That being said, I urge all operators to continue to maintain compliance and to be communicative with us. Civil Aviation Authority Malaysia will and must drive the continuous growth of technology, and we will always be supportive. I wish everybody a successful webinar, and we look forward to constant communication. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain Chester, for the very informative presentation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to the next speaker, this webinar is presented by Schiebel, and we are pleased to present a video on Schiebel. Well, now, without further ado, may I invite Mr. Neil Hunter and Mr. David Peel from Schiebel to discuss vertical takeoff and landing unmanned aerial systems, on exploring the limitations and challenges of wider UAS use in the military scenarios, combined with the ever-increasing demand for increased capabilities. Is the VTOL UAS simply innovative, or is it a disruptive technology? Mr. Neil and Mr. David, you may please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you very much, DATO. The title of our presentation today, as you can see on this slide, is VTOL UAS. Are they innovative or disruptive, or a mixture of both? And we will use the example of our Schiebel Camcopter S100 to discuss the viability stroke truth of this statement. Next slide, please. During the next 15 minutes, we'll say a few words about our company. We'll tell you all about our S100 capability, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, and we'll discuss the strengths and challenges of VTOL systems today. What are the technological challenges? What does it really need to do? And then we'll move on to the second half of the presentation, when we'll use the S100 as an example of talking about this. You know, what are the performance specifications? What are the current capabilities? And what are we doing in the future? And then we'll leave you with the question of, do you think we're already accepting this challenge, and what else needs to be done? The two pictures on this slide, the top one shows that the Schiebel group of companies is more than just a camcopter S100. We've actually been selling handheld mine detectors for the last 30 years all over the world, and we still work with the US Army, NATO, and the United Nations as good examples. The second picture here is our current production facility in a place called Wiener Neustadt, which is just south of Vienna. This has recently been extended to twice its size, and you're seeing a picture here of the new extended facility. Next slide, please. As DATO has kindly said, we are a global company now. Our headquarters are in Austria, in Vienna, and that is where our main production facility is. But we also have an office in the United States with a footprint there. We have a large MRO, which stands for Maintenance, Repair and Overhaul facility in the United Arab Emirates. And we also have a company down in Australia called Schiebel Pacific. Next slide. So just a few words on the S100 capability as it is today. I think the first point to make is that we have not achieved the status we have today overnight. It has taken us an awful long time, probably close to 20 years, to be able to make that statement, that we still believe we're probably the only proven 200 kilogram maximum takeoff weight unmanned helicopter in the global market today. We have something like 33 customers spread over 5 continents. And whilst maybe not a lot of hours in the manned world, for the unmanned world, particularly for the helicopters, we have something like 100,000 flight hours. We've delivered over 350 air vehicles to the global market. And I think it's next week we will deliver numbers 402 and 403, I think it is, to the French Navy. As you would expect for a helicopter capability, we see ourselves viable for both the land and the maritime domains, and the small footprint being paramount to what we can achieve. It's the day and night capability, as is any UAV. We've operated from excess of 30 ships. And as I'll say towards the end of this presentation, Schiebel is much more than just the air vehicle and the sensors. We look to provide 24/7 support and have a robust logistics support in the background. Next slide, please. I'll now hand over to my colleague, David Peel, who will now get into the meat of this presentation, discussing the value of VTOL UAS in the market today. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Neil. Interestingly, when you start looking around at VTOL UAS systems and you look at their strengths and the challenges they face, Schiebel took an approach to actually look at all the current opposition vehicles that were actually in the world and to color code them by saying, okay, green is an acceptable level and is one that is a market leader. Yellow is simply something that goes along with the majority of the people. And red are areas where that particular provider of a system may not be at a level yet that is widely accepted by the industry. Understanding what each of the UAS systems need to do, and therefore how do they project themselves in the marketplace. And most of these systems have developed from a current manned platform that has then been adapted to try and keep pace using technology and a little bit of innovation, where others have actually gone in right from the outset as a platform deliberately targeted at a, say, for example, ISR type scenarios in the military. And in the bottom there, you'll say, well, not all these are VTOL, and especially the bottom, the Scan Eagle is obviously a fixed wing platform. But that is one of the platforms that started off being able to be used by various systems. And some would consider that it still has a capability to take off from a very small area and to then land back at that same area, albeit with a catch system. Next slide, please. So looking at the technological challenges here, sensor capability has improved enormously over the years. The sensors are getting much smaller, they're getting much lighter. And as this has developed, what has occurred is that the platform that can carry it doesn't need to be as big or have as much capability. But the downside to this for companies is that as the sensor capability increases, we can't necessarily keep pace with the integration of those sensors into existing old platforms. And we're essentially going down two avenues. The person making the sensor is not the person that's providing the platform that platform or the sensor is operated from. So it needs closer cooperation with the sensor developers and the platform providers to make sure that the technology is compatible. Also, with the need from the end user to have a far greater overall picture, which requires all this latest high definition video footage, geo-fencing, distancing, and then the ability to process that data and store it is one of the main challenges that we see, because we are working the data link technology, whilst it is obviously moving apace, is not necessarily keeping pace with the end user demand. And as new technology developed, a platform provider has to then look at those data links, how it can get its data transferred in a manner which the end user wants. And that, I would suggest, is one of the bigger challenges. Also, as software integration, as we have all these different software platforms, everyone wants software overlaid and data overlaid on another software platform. And as we know, when we get computers talking to another, the challenge there is we have to then integrate all of this technology and software together to give the end user the picture. And again, this takes time, and we want the data and we want the intelligence now, and we don't want a development period. So we can do it, but it takes a bit of time. And then finally, the antenna line of sight. Everyone says, why do we still need an antenna when we have satellites? Well, the problem is that satellite technology and the data links on smaller vehicles cannot transfer the data at a rate that can give you full pictures currently. So we have to operate within what the bandwidths and the antennas that we have. And again, these have a limiting range. So as technology goes ahead, we have to consider how we get the best use of controlling these air vehicles and building in all of the safety protocols that cannot be lost if part of the data link goes down, because it needs to be in multiple sources to then comply with regulations. Next slide, please. So the capability and what does it really need to do? And we often come against customer expectations of a want versus a need. And often what we see is that someone may come up with a wish list, and the wish list would say they want to actually get a Rolls Royce, when really they need is a small Mini to do the job. And it's about balancing out the customer expectation of what they actually need it to do versus what they would want it to do. And that is always going to be one of our big challenges. Cost misconceptions. We have a lot of inquiry for people who want something they've seen as and I would term a toy drone, versus a military grade capability. So we have to understand that when we need to build in all of the safety features and the demands of what is the prime customer, the military customer, that is not cheap. When we then have to comply with regulations and build in all the redundancy systems, the development of all that takes an awful lot of time. So to get a permit to fly, or to get this approved to fly in airspace, is not as simple as a mass-produced small drone. So that is obviously, you know, what we have to. The customer has to work with us to understand the cost of developing that product. But here's the big one, that most unmanned systems are very much single role. They're a single role asset. In other words, they are designed to do one job and one job only. But more and more, we are seeing that customers, and rightly so, want their very valuable asset to be a multi-role asset. And this is the area that we're going down. Next slide, please. So here's just something to provoke a little bit of discussion. What do we really want this UAS system to do? now and going forward into the future? Do we want it to replace the unmanned helicopter that can undersling a boatload of Marines for an amphibious assault? Do we want it to be able to insert personnel into the battlefield or recover them from the battlefield without putting other manned assets at risk? That could be the same for cargo, for medical supplies, resupply of ammunition. Or do we simply, at the moment, still want our UAS system to be a standoff tool that we use? And the picture at the bottom of the oil rig is actually taken from over 30 kilometers away with a very average sensor. So that technology, we can zoom right into these things. So the technology is already there for some elements, but we need to know from the end user, where does the end user really, or how do they want to use this to be a reactive tool or a multi-role tool that will be disruptive in its nature in a military context? Next slide, please. So Schiebel have always believed from the outset that we're looking for a multi-role, multi-domain asset. And the whole design around the S100 was that we wanted to give it multiple payload bays that could be used in different ways, and that capability would then be complementary, whether it be something underneath on the main cargo hook, or whether it be a nose place sensor. So Schiebel, right at the outset, developed a multi-platform tool with multiple payload bays that could be, if required, used in a multi-role situation, rather than just going down the one sensor route. Next slide, please. I'd just like to hand back to my colleague Neil, who will just talk through some specifics about the S100.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Just to sort of finish off the presentation over the next 5 minutes or so, if we just focus now in on the S100, taking in mind what David has said and how well or badly we meet some of those requirements for the future. Here is just a few performance specs. There's a lot of information on this slide, and I obviously don't expect you to read it all, but we'll just pick out a few points in red. You know, a key point is persistence for a UAS. The S100 can achieve over 6 hours with a 34 kilogram payload. And if we add the extended fuel tank to the left-hand side, we can actually get up to 10 hours endurance. I would then argue that gives you persistence. Surface ceiling of 18,000 feet. Now, I would accept that you probably wouldn't want to operate at that height above mean sea level, but the key point here is when you're operating from hot and high places, particularly for takeoff, being able to take off at height is very important. For the operating temperature, okay, maybe just a bunch of figures, -40 to +55. What does that actually mean? Well, it means we can and have done operated off icebreakers in the Arctic, and we routinely fly in the deserts of the Middle East and the hot and moist areas of here in Southeast Asia. And then finally, the data link, 200 kilometers. I would argue that is beyond visual line of sight, and it is a good capability. Next slide. Current capabilities, I'll be the first to accept that the S100 is primarily an ISR, an intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capability, and that's primarily what we put in the main payload in the belly. But over the last few years, we've integrated radars, both in the maritime with the Thales iMaster, and on the land domain, the PicoSAR. Both are very good radars, and both come with what we call GMTI and MMTI. We've also integrated HFDF communications relays. Being able to operate in a GPS denied environment is very important nowadays, particularly in the military domain, and we have achieved that, and we do that today. For the maritime domain, we've integrated a harpoon to secure the aircraft to deck like a manned helicopter, and have enhanced that with the Airbus Deck Finder landing system for additional safety. A helicopter should be able to carry loads, and we can do that. We can either do that in a drop box, which is what you see here on the left-hand side of the aircraft, and you can drop anything from something like a life jacket to a medical supply, to actually carrying underslung loads, which we have done for the US Army. I'll talk a little bit about manned-unmanned teaming in a following slide, but to pick up on the civil aviation briefing, yes, we fly in civil airspace today. We fly in unregulated airspace, and using things like ADS-B, Mode 5 and IFF are ways we're able to achieve that. Next slide. With a background in the Navy, you'd expect me to say that the answer to the maritime domain is helicopters, and I firmly believe that. We have over 10,000 flight hours, 2,000 deck landings, and as you can see, 8 navies and 30 plus vessels. I still believe moving forward, a helicopter is the best placed capability for the maritime domain. Next slide. Interoperability, it's key moving forward, whether it's civilian or whether it's military. The unmanned aircraft need to be able to work with their manned counterparts. And this example here shows a picture of us achieving level 5 command and control all out of the H145 helicopter. Obviously integrating into ships, picking up on Dave's point about data, it's about what you do with that information, how you integrate it into a ship's command system or even a moving convoy on the ground. And then finally, STANAG compliant. If you're not compliant with today's standards, you'll never be interoperable. Next slide. And finally, the point I put at the bottom is it's not all about the AV, it's what us ex-military guys talk about, the lines of development. So we in Schiebel fully recognize that actually it's all well and good building and selling and delivering a helicopter with the sensors, but actually equally important is all the stuff that happens on in the background, whether that's integrated logistics support, whether that's maintenance, whether that's engineering, software, training, all the sort of stuff that's put on this slide. We treat equally as important to building a safe aircraft itself. Next slide. And then finally, this is our last slide, which I'll hand back to Dave and I'll let him pose the question.
Thank you very much, Neil. So what we've done here at the final slide, we've added in the Schiebel S100 in the top line, and we have, you know, biasly so, probably ranked ourselves as to where we see ourselves with the competition. And we are truly a multi-role platform with over 100,000 hours of operational experience and still power for weight ratio, you know, class leading what it can do. So yes, it is a multi-role asset that can be used. Is it innovation? Yes, it is. But can it be disruptive? And we would like to think so, as long as it is actually then truly used in a multi-role domain rather than single use as it tends to be right now. Thank you very much on behalf of Neil and myself for listening us to today.
Thank you. Back to you, DATO.
Thank you, Mr. Neil and Mr. David, for the very interesting perspectives on the UAS systems and the challenges currently faced. I'm sure the audience will definitely benefit from your insights. Now let's move on to our third and next panelist, Major Nick Mohammed Hazriq Mohammed Zain, to discuss on user perspectives on future drones and air mobility systems, issues and challenges. Major Hazriq, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Dr. William Stevenson. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to Captain Chester Wu, CEO of CAAM, Mr. Neil Hunter, Schiebel Global Business Director, Mr. David Fiel, Schiebel Asia Sales Director, Mr. Kamaru Mohammed, CEO of Aerodyne, and all the participants. I'm so glad to be given the honor to be one of the speakers for this very unique and historic webinar. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincerest gratitude to DSA for organizing this event and inviting us to participate in this webinar. What I'm about to present and discuss today are the issues and challenges that we are facing right now and what we need from drones, or I prefer to call it Unmanned Aircraft System, UAS. I'll present this topic in my best possible capacity from the perspective of operational and tactical level. I hope what I'm about to present here will hopefully catch your best interest. Now I begin my presentation with one question. What do we need? We as a user, authority or industry player, or even OEM, what do we need? I'll provide the answer at the end of my presentation. But for now, we need to look at the issues and challenges that needed to be solved by us. All these issues and challenges are the key point that industry players and we as a user need to concentrate and rectify in order to have a safe and effective UAS operation. The issues are first point is air safety. The question is it possible to have UAV embedded into national airspace without disrupting ongoing operation? I will let this question hang in the air for us to think about it. As for now, generally, worldwide, we have rules such as a restriction to operate beyond pilot line of sight, restriction to operate over people, over 400 feet, and many more to control the air safety. And I believe these are the main issues for us. However, I am also confident that our CAAM are already taking measures to handle this issue and have viable approach to manage it. I'll not discuss more about this point. My next point is illegal drone, which is directly connecting to the counter UAS. This is a real threat. This issue is without a doubt related with air safety matter, but it is worse. Illegal drones, which means anybody can illegally operate as long as they have a drone. As we are all aware, drone applications are getting bigger over the years, and if you don't have an effective system to monitor any flying drone, we'll face an even bigger problem in the future. Remember, the first thing to control anything is to detect, identify, and act. But are we capable of doing this? If we are not capable, can we then guarantee the air safety? Back to point number one. At this point, coordination between authorities, industry players, policymakers plays a very important role in coordinating what the best course of action for everyone. The use of anti-drone system should also be taken into consideration when dealing with illegal drones. At this point, I would like to suggest UAS or drone industry player should be involved with CUAS. You have a UAS at one end, and at the other end, you have a CUAS. What a beauty. My next point is privacy and security. Privacy and security are the two important key things that must go hand in hand, and there must be some point where the two must overlap each other. By flying drone with any optical or signal intelligence payload, public privacy and security for certain area or information can easily be violated. For illegal drone, shooting can be done at any target without acquiring a permit from authority. How to overcome this? And how to control any authority drone from not looking at others' location except the sole target area? As the application of drone emerge, these are the issues that will arise later, and we need to consider it from now. My next point is rules and legality. These points are more towards strategic consideration, such as a policies, registration, enforcement, SOP, and all this must suit the current regulatory system or regulatory system that needed to be reviewed. These are crucial matters that needed to be considered by government, and I strongly believe they are currently working on it. My next point is insurance. Well, I'm not an insurance agent, but nevertheless, I want to take the opportunity to promote insurance here. Please make insurance mandatory for every drone that needed to take off, because we know if any accident happens, just a matter of time, we need to be prepared and get ready for it. So, drone insurance is very important and it's a must. And my last point here is training and monitoring system. Both are important. We need to train our pilot, our operator. We need to monitor them. In order to do that, we need progressive system. For civilian drone pilots, they must be fully competent to handle their drone and master the laws and regulation. The proper system should be developed by authorities to monitor all drone pilots in order to control them. So in order to solve all the issues and at the same time meet the demands or user requirement, the challenges that we are facing now are, next slide please. The challenges that we are facing now is, first, super drone system. We definitely need swarms and kamikaze drone. Swarm and kamikaze are our future. In addition, the market is demanding this. Just this is crucial for us to have a super drone. We need UAS with high endurance, long range, multiple and simultaneous payload capability, multi-role, high operating altitude, high speed, stealth, intelligent self-control, fully redundancy, weather resistant, and more. Choose to develop super drone require a massive effort from research and development team among industrial players. Are you ready to deliver this? And don't forget, CUAS also has to improve in order to counter this. As I mentioned before, that UAS and CUAS must move together to balance each other. My second point here is total solution. This is what the user demand. Total solution starting from A to Z. Hence, it must cover comprehensive system from UAV, payloads, data management, including processing, exploitation, analysis, storage, and dissemination, network and communication, ground support system, integrated logistics support, maintenance, as well as training. And to achieve this, industries must work together with others to get viable solution. Aside from that, input from experienced users are necessary, and current technology from universities or research center are vital, as these are the combination that need to blend together to come out with a total solution UAS. Next point, interoperability. This is very important requirement that need to be understood before proposing any UAS. The new system must be able to integrate with existing system, data management, network and communication. This is important in order to maintain command and control, data exploitation, and also data management for the system. And it's a responsibility for users and contractors aspires to integrate deployed UAV communication system into existing network in order to provide timely dissemination of collected information or intelligence to customers. My next point here is research and development. When we talk about R&D, its main points are objective, expertise, and fun. At national level, industry players must play a very important role in working together to achieve the research objective, of course, with the support of government. In R&D, the most important thing to do is not waste your time and money on doing research towards existing product or capability that has already been done. Just take it and bring it to the next level. And always know your capability and limit. Should it be beyond your capability, then engage with others instead. Technologies advancement. Next point. Technology advancement is something that we cannot avoid. It's moving so fast. Even now in the pandemic, we seem to pose no effect to them. Instead, they vigorously keep developing. The main challenges are, as technology keep advancing at a faster rate than before, we must keep updating ourselves. Like it or not, we have to. Industries and users must somehow have a system that able to keep track on the technology advancement, because like I mentioned before, UAS and CUAS are moving together. When we include advancement on one of them, it will reflect each other's capabilities. And last but not least, the laws and regulation. Actually, these are part of CUAS under Mission Command. As previously mentioned and discussed, laws and regulation is the key of everything. The key to develop and to bind together all the aspects to ensure success without neglecting the security. Comprehensive and balanced law and regulations are needed to guarantee both development and security can move together. Now, what is our need? What we need is a complete total solution UAS that can deliver persistent, that's like versatility, survivability, and reduce risk to human life and nature. Yes, of course, we love nature. Persistent. We want UAS that is persistent at doing the job. As we know, the persistency of the system will affect its endurance and its availability, which will affect our readiness. Persistent UAS in doing its job is needed in order to not jeopardize any of our mission. We also need versatile UAS, a UAS that capable for various missions. Of course, it's related to the capability of UAS to carry various and multiple type of payload or sensors. This versatility is very important to us because we want to kill two birds with one stone. Survivability. As we all understood that all the components or parts have a lifetime, so do UAS. Its electronic components, rotor, engine, payload or sensor, airframe, and even the ground support equipment of the system have a lifetime. What we're expecting is UAS that have a long lifetime, robust, and can survive any defined environment and situation for a long time. Besides schedule maintenance, the physical and software UAS must be able to fulfill this requirement. And last but not least, reduce risk to human life. This is very important. For in any mission, we do need to calculate and minimize the risk. We always do that. The type of risk that we always consider include a risk to human and property on the ground, risk to operator and ground crew, and flight-related risk. And even if it's under the flight-related risk, it still will affect the human life. So, to avoid any of unprecedented situation from happening, redundancy or backup is very important. We are looking for redundancy at the overall system of the UAS, starting from power system, the data link system, flight control system, communication system, and so on. We don't want our UAV to land on, let's say, on people's head. We want them to land at the target point that we determine. Even in the emergency or total loss of link situation, we still determine where to land. As for now, next slide please. As for now, based on our current development and operation, what we are really looking forward is UAS that can execute or support kind of missions such as ISR, mapping, CBRNE detection, signal intelligence, communication relay, combat search and rescue. Please analyze and brainstorm about it in order for you to obtain the answer in the form of type of payload or sensor that is required, type of UAV or system that's suitable, data received, how to process and analyze it, what kind of system needed to process and analyze the data, how to deliver the data, how to interconnect the data with other systems, and how to keep the data in secure and accessible storage. What skills are needed and how to train the people for that skills, how to support the logistic plan. With all the answer, I hope all industry players will make a possible effort and present the best system for us, and of course, at a reasonable cost. With that, I end up my presentation. But before that, let me caution you. Drone or UAS in Malaysia now is in accumulation phase. Users or customers are still studying and try to get the best option possible for them. And once the momentum come in, it will break up and it becomes super bullish. Believe me, it will come in the near future. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Major Hazriq, for sharing your insights from the end user's point of view. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, let us take a short break. This webinar is presented by Schiebel and our gold sponsor, Aerodyne Group. We'd like to present our gold sponsor, the Aerodyne Group.
Okay.
Well, welcome back. Our final speaker for today is Mr. Kamarul Mohammed, the founder and CEO of Aerodyne Group, who will be presenting the current state of drone industry and its future direction. Mr. Kamarul, please proceed with your presentation.
Very good afternoon, everyone. It is truly my honor and pleasure to be talking here today among a list of very distinguished guests. So I will talk, allow me to just share my screen. So I'm presuming everyone can see these slides. So I'll be talking about the current state of the drone industry and its future direction. To start with, I will talk a little bit about Aerodyne and the growth of the drone industry and where this industry is going at the moment. So very quickly, this is Aerodyne today. We are Malaysia's leading global tech company. We are present in 35 countries as of today. What you see on the screen are where we have our regional HQ around the world. And we are also present in 20 plus 84 other countries where we work in collaboration with various partners around the world. The main thing that I would also like to highlight, and which is the theme of the conversation earlier as well, we have the highest safety track record so far. Since 2016, we have 0 LTI, and the incident in our operation is 0.02% in our operation. We manage over 300,000 assets, over 100,000 kilometers of power line around the world. Wind turbine, we manage over 5,000 wind turbine, 4,000 megawatts of solar farms as well. So those are actually very, very large numbers that we have been operating around the world. And of course, all of these are in the compliance of all the local civil aviation authority. And our pilots are, certified by CASA, Part 107 in the UK, in the US. And 10 crew currently. 200 of those are in Malaysia, and the rest are scattered around the world. It is still at the nascent stage, and I will talk a little bit about this as well in the future, how the drone industry is actually growing very, very fast as well. So we also ranked second globally. If you look at the screen, we've been climbing from the 7th in 2018, and today in 2020 we are actually already ranked second. And even with those ranking, you can see on the chart over here as well, our growth around the world has been through partnering and friendly acquisition of other drone services companies around the world. Those drone companies are actually ranked separately. Services market, this is on the consumer side, and afterwards I will talk consumer and industry side. Later on I will talk a little bit about the military side as well. The big jump here is that the growth is around 51% CAGR. The main vertical is actually agriculture delivery, and the fastest growing vertical is actually drone delivery. And the top market is in Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific. And when we talk about drones, actually the part of drone flying itself is not the most significant one. In fact, if you look at the chart on the bottom right-hand corner, the data collection services represent only 13% of the value throughout the value chain. And I think this is a theme that it's only the drone itself is only a data capture device. But how do you get the intelligence? How you react upon those intelligence? And that's actually where the big, the real value in the whole chain of drone services provider. So that this commercial and industrial use, it is expected to be around 26 billion by 2025, and the big market is actually North America and Asia Pacific. Even for us as well, Aerodyne is actually primarily a industry solutions provider. We provide total solutions to our customer, from data capture to analytics to data delivery and all that. Right? So if you were to look at this market that you can see, is that we are well positioned in all those key markets that I explored before. Now, remember in the earlier stage, I mentioned that drone, or rather our solution is actually DT3. So the first DT is actually drone technology. So we provide global DAS, global drone as a service. So our customers can come to us and we provide immediate deployment for our client, zero capex, zero hassle, which means that there's no need for them to train, to take care of the equipment. We take care of all those aspects. Customers come to us and they get the intelligence from the drone data that they needed. And in most cases, if not 100% of the cases, our client get immediate value in their operational costs by using our solutions. So this is the first part of the DT, which is drone technology. I'm going to talk about the second part, which is the data technology, which is how do you get those intelligence from your drone data? And this is the part that I'm so proud to share, that our data technology is 100% made in Malaysia. And it is not just developed in Malaysia, but it's already being used globally. So this is a made in Malaysia technology that is being deployed around the world. So that's actually what is very, very exciting about our data technology. Now, data technology by itself is only about analytics, it's about storing it on the platform. The real value is when you can be disruptive, or rather when we can provide disruptive solutions to our customer. So here is how we actually the next step. But I'm just going to talk because the previous panelists talk about the recent COVID-19 where drones were being used quite significantly. We actually provided more than 50 personnel to assist both PDRM and ATM during between March and June of this year. And the main thing that I would like to highlight as well, number one, is zero incident. It's a very safe and secure operation, and this is done with the approval of CAAM. I also wanted to highlight that we flew over 57,000 kilometers in those 3.5 months while we were operating on the CSR basis to help the nation. So that's 57,000 kilometers is basically roughly 1.5 times around the world. So it's actually, it's a testimony how drone done well will add significant value to any operations. And we're also proud to be able to help both ATM and PDRM reduce the number of non-compliance. Because I remember when we first started this operation, the number was in the high 15%. Towards the end of the operation, the numbers actually dipped below 4%. So I would say that this was a hugely successful joint operation between the Malaysian forces and the industry as well. So anyway, let's just go back about the DT3, the transformation that I mentioned about earlier. So drone data are supposed to disrupt your operation. Drone data are supposed to allow you to do things faster, better, cheaper, and safer as well. And that's actually our value proposition. You know, when we look at power line inspection, for example, we save 20% of the cost. And this is not just in Malaysia, but globally right now. And we are actually accelerating the process by 4 times. So 4 times faster than doing it using the incumbent, using the traditional methods of helicopters or using engineers that's flying to the road. So this is the disruptive nature. This is the industry 4.0 that we are talking about. How we use drone technology to deliver real value to the industry, to the customers. Now, the evolutions of drones, and I think this is where I want to talk about where the drone industry is going. In the past, we started with piloted unmanned aircraft. I will not go into detail between the generation 1 to generation 8. But the main thing that I would like to highlight is that the military side has gone a lot faster than the industry or commercial applications. So today, we are almost at generation 7 as far as commercial operation is concerned, which means that the technology for full autonomy from takeoff to landing is already available. We are already testing it. A couple of weeks ago, we were controlling drone with approval, of course, in the UK. That's about 10,000 kilometers away from our command center here in Malaysia. So those are actually the readiness of technology in terms of going to full autonomy. The regulation, the regulatory support for this, however, is still at 5.5 at the moment. For example, flying beyond visual line of sight is understandably, it's not something that is allowed yet at the moment. Flying BVLOS, a lot of things needs to put in place, but the technology is already available. And this is primarily a lot more prevalent if you look at military applications. In terms of military today, we have already at generation 8. You know, this is AI driven, it's collaborative, swarm with mission optimization. I'm going to touch a little bit about that as well in my subsequent slide. So yes, military application has gone far, and primarily also because the bigger budget that is actually been invested in this. We look at how much DARPA is actually spending money on development of swarm and collaborative technology. And the same thing as well in Israel, in China, in Russia. Everyone is putting a lot of energy into developing AI-driven collaborative swarm nested drone system. So let's take a look about that as well, right? So on top of that, we're talking about the future. And before I go into the military side, UAM is the future. This is unmanned urban air mobility. So this is really the future. We are expecting by 2025 to have a large-scale deployment of UAM in urban areas. Now, UAM is actually an extension of current drone technologies. It's actually an upscaling of current drone technology and deliver air mobility. And this is actually a much bigger market. We're talking about the future of drones, right? This is a much bigger market, even compared to the military usage, military utilizations on drone. So this is something that we all should be looking out for, because a lot of things are happening in the UAM side. Now let's go back to the military side. Number one, and this is a little bit scary for me to talk about this as well, because I'm not from the military side. But to be honest, smart killer drones, killer robots are already coming. You know, and it is also currently very, very difficult to defend at the moment. You know, and as you can see, what I say over there is technology wins war. So if you were to look at the state of the current killer robots that are available right now, this is almost akin to what happened at the end of World War II. You know, this is actually a much bigger market, even compared to the military utilizations on drone. So this is something that we all should be looking out for, because a lot of things are happening in the UAM side. Now let's go back to the military side. Number one, and this is a little bit scary for me to talk about this as well, because I'm not from the military side. But to be honest, smart killer drones, killer robots are already coming. You know, and it is also currently very, very difficult to defend at the moment. You know, and how America were able to end World War II by using, atomic bomb. At that time, there were no other nation or superpowers that have mastery over the technology. And it is the same thing if we were to take a step back. And what we have now in terms of drone technology is also almost at the same stage. America, China, Israel, Russia are all looking and developing into developing these things. And what we do not have right now is actually how to defend them. Now, if you were to look at Hiroshima earlier, right, technology wins the war. I know it is very tragic that 230,000 people actually lost their life in Japan. But according to the Americans, if they were to proceed with the invasion of Japan, the Operation Olympic, it could have killed more than 10 million people as well. So this is, I'm bringing this parallel because what drone, if it goes into the wrong hand, is actually, we are at the same stage where in World War II, we have atomic bomb, similar to the smart killer robots that we have. And we just don't have to go very far. It is already being used today. It is already being used in the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. It is already being used. And this is very, very scary as well, right? And likewise for Malaysia, this is something that we need to be very much aware of as well. So this war that is being fought in Nagorno-Karabakh is actually the first war using AI-driven drones, and it's already happening today. So if you were to look at the drone industry for military use, border dispute are driving drone adoptions globally, and it's actually being adopted very, very fast. And there is, in fact, this is already something that we need to look at already in the neighboring countries of Turkey, which is also our ally, basically, right? And one thing I would like to highlight here as well is that, for example, these killer drones are supplied by Israel to Azerbaijan, and the socio-political situation there as well is that Turkey, or rather Israel, depends 40% of their oil energy from Azerbaijan. And even then, at the request of Armenia, they might stop the delivery of these killer drones. So that's actually what has been happening. Now, so that's basically the highlight that I have. Again, I think the future of drone technology is actually exciting, but at the same time, very, very scary as well. For us to really be looking at counter drone. At the moment today, we are also involved in doing counter drone as well. I think what we should all really be looking at, number one, is to make sure that in Malaysia, we have a strong enough drone system to protect ourselves. But at the same time, we should also be placing significant energy on counter drone system as well, because currently a lot of these countries are powerless against these smart AI-driven drones around the world. And with that, I end my presentation. I again would thank the organizer for having me on this exciting platform to talk about drones and the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kamarul, for the insightful presentation, and I'd like to congratulate you for your achievement. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have gained a lot from the presentations done by our speakers. Well, it is now time for the Q&A session. There have been quite a few questions that have come in, which we will invite the speakers to address. However, unfortunately, Captain Chester will not be with us because he has got something else to attend to. But any questions addressed to him will be addressed by the organizers, and we'll get back to you. This includes any other questions that we may not be able to take on due to time constraints. Well, let me start off with the first question that we have received. We've got one from for Aerodyne, that is for Mr. Kamarul, if I can shoot this question to you. Let me just read this out. As we all know, besides tactical and operational use in military and the security domain, other most common use of drones are for surveillance, filmmaking, photography, fun, hobby, and so forth. What about delivery and transportation, or will there be any other areas that drones can be used in the future?
Right.
Mr.
Thank you for the question.
Please.
Right. Thank you, Dato. Thank you for the questions. Indeed, as I mentioned earlier, drone delivery is actually the fastest growing vertical right now. And I expect widespread operations of drone delivery, and we ourselves are involved in this. We would expect the large-scale operations to begin in 2 years from now. I think the primary roadblocks right now is actually public acceptance and also regulations. In terms of technology, it's already available right now. Public acceptance, meaning that, a question of privacy, question of safety. So public needs to be educated about this potential drone technology. It has already been trialed in many places around the world. In Japan, for example, they're already doing this. Us also involved with the partners over there. Doing drone delivery currently are being limited to non-urban environment. Some people are doing this from ship to shore in a very safe, controlled kind of environment. But I also do see between 3 to 5 years from now, it will replace the current logistics. How it is being managed right now. In terms of other industries, it's actually very wide and varied. The one that I mentioned, we are primarily involved in infrastructure and agriculture, but there are a lot of other things that can be done. For example, in Australia, we work on developing a system to manage the meat and livestock industry, basically for farming of a very, very large farms, how to use this technology to do that. In a few other places, I cannot mention the countries right now, we are also using drones for long distance pipeline surveillance, security surveillance over hundreds of kilometers of solutions as well. So there are so many use cases for drones. Again, I would always look at drone only as a platform to do data capture. The real value is actually in interoperability of getting data, not just from drones, but also getting data from various sensors around on the ground as well. And yeah, those are actually various other use cases for drones.
So its utilization is really very wide, yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let me get to the next question. The next question is it's directed to Major Hazriq, if I can read it out. With the fast technological changes, often through life support and unmanned systems, can be a challenge. As a user, what are your expectations from the manufacturers or suppliers of these unmanned systems? Yes, Major Hazriq.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you for participation. It's a very good question. The answer to answer that question is more. That's the word. We want more. We expecting more from our OEM or suppliers. As I mentioned before, we need UAS with a survivability. In order to achieve that, we need to do schedule maintenance, update, and we need support from them. And to do all that, a cooperation, the cooperation between both OEM and supplier is very important. And we are expected that they give us a full 24/7 availability from OEM. And we also expect professional and expert on what they say and what they do. We also want effective and fast response on any issues or problem that we highlighted. Also, we want OEM or supplier always keep in touch or give us regular updates on current system or latest development that are related to our system. And last but not least, I think we acquiring the knowledge, the OEM or supplier, we should have a knowledge better than us or user or customer. So my reminder to all companies or suppliers out there, before committing anything with users, please ensure you fulfill the expectation that, as I mentioned before. I think that's to answer the question, Dato'. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a question here for Schiebel, Mr. Neil and Mr. David. Yeah? Manufacturing companies, considering some now developed larger platforms for greater payload capacities. How do you see the VTOL market developing over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think I'll take that as a start. I think history has shown the utility and the use of manned VTOL, and there is no dispute or debate that even today the world continues to build manned helicopters in an abundance and use them. I personally think the same is starting to happen in the unmanned world, and will continue to happen. So I think my crystal ball tells me that VTOL UAS will continue to grow, and actually will probably start to grow substantially as companies like ourselves and others like Airbus and Leonardo, the big companies who make helicopters, are out there doing exactly the same. So the market is definitely about growth. I think the other part of your question is, I'm a great believer in a sort of a family of capability. Not one size fits everything. So there will always be different air vehicles or different systems for different requirements. If you're looking at cargo carrying, or something we talked about earlier, in line with drone delivery, you only need a small aircraft to deliver, say, a pouch of blood. But on the other hand, if you want to move significant spares, then you probably need a helicopter that weighs 1,000 to 2,000 kilograms that can lift substantial loads, something like the CAAM, common UAS over in the United States. So I think there is a place. Technology and physics obviously drive the size of different UAS. If you want a large, long-range maritime radar, you need to provide a lot of power and probably the capacity to carry it. So in summary, I think there is a place for a lot more manufacturers in the VTOL UAS market, and because there is growth, and particularly in the maritime domain, where you're starting to see more and more end users employing VTOL UAS, whether that's for fisheries, whether that's military, whether that's search and rescue, it's sort of et cetera, the market is growing.
Thank you very much. Well, due to time constraints, I believe we have reached the end of our webinar. And in respect of time, allow me to quickly wrap up and highlight some points that were brought up during the webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, drones and UAS are an eventual necessity for both the military and commercial purposes, and it is imperative that the industry and users work together to address the challenges and to develop and upgrade systems of the future. I would say that this includes the strategic utility and kinds of payloads that are required for operations and its impact on future development. With the advancement of technology, its impact will be enormous on national and regional defense and security and other commercial and industrial utility. However, the utilization of airspace, legal, regulatory, and safety aspects need to be considered, especially for industrial and commercial use. With that, it brings us to the end of the session. And on behalf of the organizer, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Malaysian Armed Forces, Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia, and the Defense Military Intelligence Division for their gracious support towards the DSA series of events. A big thank you to Schiebel for presenting today's webinar and our gold sponsor, the Aerodyne Group. The Honorable CDF, distinguished panelists, and to all participants for attending this webinar today. And congratulations to the co-organizers, DSA, Aerosphere, and SciDef for the awesome webinar this afternoon. Thank you and stay safe. With that, I shall hand you back to the MC, Maria.
Thank you so much, Dr. William. Now, before we wrap this up, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Malaysian Armed Forces and Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia for all the support, to Schiebel and Aerodyne Group, to the honorable moderator and panelists for the interesting and informative talk. We'd like to hear your feedback on our webinar today. Let us know your thoughts, so this will help us improve our next webinar series. You may scan the QR code shown on your screen or log on to our website to complete the survey. Also, don't forget to visit our website and click on Digital Space link for our digital showroom. Enhance your brand visibility and get recognized through DSA's digital space. This webinar series is also held to promote DSA and NetTech Asia 2022. DSA and NetTech Asia 2022 is hosted, supported, and co-organized by the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Home Affairs. It is the biggest and most efficiently organized defense and homeland security show in Asia, showcasing the world's most advanced technologies, systems, hardware, and electronic warfare that the market has to offer. The 17th edition of DSA will at Malaysia International Trade and Exhibition Center, MITEC in Kuala Lumpur. For attending this webinar today, we are so glad and honored that you're willing to spend your time to be with us, and we hope everyone has gained some insights from the topics discussed today, and hopefully it will be beneficial to all of you. And with that, I would like to end this session. Stay tuned and don't miss out on more exciting topics for our webinar series coming up soon. Hope you enjoyed our webinar today, and we will be closing this webinar with our DSA video. Till then, stay safe and take care. Assalamualaikum.